Hey everybody, my name is Miguel Gonzalez, and this is going to be my final for ethics in law enforcement. I do apologize, I do have COVID, so I may be sneezing and coughing a lot, and I may sound pretty sick in these slides. So just bear with me. Thank you. So the ethics and law enforcement category that I chose was street vending because street vending is a politically controversial um, category per se, where there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of different individuals where are involved with these folks in different parts of our state, which has become a huge issue and an ethical dilemma for our state. What is actually wrong? Are we allowing these individuals to do this freely without any consequences, without any rules or regulations? So we're going to see breaking down a little bit more how these individuals influence our economy, and then what viewpoint do the city officials have, and also law enforcement individuals who are involved with these people. So sorry. So, what involvement does street vending have in our judicial system? Well, before 2018, street vending was actually illegal in our state. So, there was actual enforcement by law enforcement officers that could target these individuals for food vending or street vending, sidewalk vending, as they call it, and they can be fined or even arrested and charged for this illegal act. So in 2018, Senate Bill 946 legalized sidewalk vending. So this was decriminalized to allow these individuals to sell merchandise freely without being stopped by law enforcement. However, they were still subject to rules and regulations by city officials because they could still implement their own category on what can be allowed to be sold or in quantities and so forth to keep the public safe. So, but one of the issues was that, one of the issues was that, this was only specifically targeted for merchant sellers. It really wasn't targeted for food vending. So, food vending was also being affected. So, in 2023, SB 97. I do apologize for the coughing. SB 972 was passed, which allowed a decriminalization in the food vending. So now law enforcement wasn't able to now arrest anybody or charge anybody for the food vending because now it had been decriminalized. However, they were still subjected to municipal violations by the city ordinance, which were subjected to code enforcement rules and health code violations and so forth. So how does this become a moral ethical dilemma? Well, in short, right now, the cities are kind of obligated to do what's right, regardless of their emotional views, right? Because you have a city council and a mayor, and each one's going to have its own interpretation of what is right and what is wrong. So we're going to see how they're pressured to do, what's right for its constituents, along with its businesses and other individuals who do business in the city, and a lot of these may not be really well viewed by the public, who they are pretty much voted by the public to serve in their behalf. So we're going to see that conflict of interest as well. We're going to see how law enforcement is used to mediate between the code enforcement issue, and it's pretty much just a civil issue when it comes down to this. So we'll see how these parties are affected. So this brings me to the deontological theory. And this theory suggests that an ethical theory that says that actions are good or bad according to a clear set of rules. So according to this deontology, the morality of an action is determined by whether it adheres to these rules or principles rather than the consequences it brings about, right? So pretty much the simple version of this interpretation is pretty much this is what's going to be right according to the rules that are set. So in the case of the cities, we have how the cities are establishing these rules and regulations, and this is what they're deemed to be correct or morally right, because this is what the rules says is right. So this is very different from consequentialism, which judges the actions by their results. So in deontology, it doesn't require weighing the costs and the benefits of the situation. It avoids the subjectivity and uncertainty because it only has to follow the rules. It's really pretty much is just black and white. It's just clear as it gets. There's no real gray area. It's just this is the rules that we're going to follow, and there's no debate. And this is where the ethical dilemma comes because the cities are faced with, their duty to protect their citizens from constituents. For example, you have legitimate businesses in the city who have paid their taxes, their permits, you have done everything up to code to be able to sell, merchandise or food produce. And so they need to be advocated for as well. So this is where they're challenged because they have to help them, but they also have to help out these individuals who now by state law, it decriminalizes their ability to sell on the sidewalk, on the public sidewalk, but also they have to understand the limitations that they have for the reasons they maybe can't apply for a permit, or maybe it has legal status issues where they can't provide, a legal residency, and then that affects how they, each county is different. And, I can't really speak on every single one of them. Each city is different, but I know some counties it requires, a legal residency to be able to food vend, and then the carts or wherever you're storing the food needs to be up to health code because there's some serious health violations because you let's say for example this scenario you have the city who allows these individuals to, let's say, food vend, and they think that they're doing the right thing. But what happens if they allow these individuals to food vend and somebody gets severely sick that results in even death because there is no health code up to standard to prevent these individuals from, serving bad food, right? And this is all hypothetical, and there's a lot of ifs and there's a lot of what ifs on both sides, but this is one of the issues that they come across. So they also have to employ code enforcement, which, many of us have seen the videos online that can be, pretty disheartening to see how their businesses gets shut down and then their stuff gets towed and their stuff gets removed. So this is one of the issues that, the cities face. In a deontologist point of view, the cities will follow it by the book, black and white, and there's no interruption whatsoever because they have already set the set municipal code, and that's what they're going to follow, and no question about it. And city officials aren't the only ones who are affected. Law enforcement are also directly affected because now law enforcement knows that their duty is to protect, and uphold the Constitution, right? And their duty is to enforce laws, right? But if this has become a de- decriminalization, now it's kind of hard to enforce these actions, and it's more of a code enforcement issue because they can't really, enforce anything anymore. And the problem is they know that, these individuals know that there's no illegal activity going on, so this results into a use of force, unnecessary restraints, unnecessary arrests, and all this paperwork, because of these issues. So law enforcement is also directly affected by this. And also, they think about, it could be a cultural thing too. Like for example, I'm Hispanic, and perhaps if I see a Hispanic vendor, I might understand the struggle. I know what it's like being there and struggling and trying to get up, but at the same time, you have to do what's right to uphold your municipal codes and laws and regulations. So, and also in a utilitarianism point of view, most officers want to make everybody happy, but that's not always going to be the case. They have to find the best resolution, for the issue to prevent it from happening again, and to prevent, any further damages to either party, and that's the kind of view that most officers view it at, but most of the time it's a, deontology view where it's just black and white. Although, some cities do allow a lot of discretion, most officers do have that, discretion and are able to de-escalate the situation. And from a Christian point of view, I the first thing that I thought was Hebrews 13:17, where it says, "Obey and submit to those in authority, and to watch for those souls, and must give an account." And we have to subject to, these authorities that God has put here on earth. It just reminds me of Romans 13:1, which states that all authority that's here on earth is pretty much allowed because of God, not because of any other reason. So we must respect that. And finally, my favorite quote was from Jesus, that was registered in Mark 12:17, when he was questioned about taxes. And Jesus said, the most fundamental words. He said, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. So even he knew, the separation of powers, if you want to call it that, and how we should respect the authorities, here on earth. Here are my references, and thank you very much.